slow.
Really slow.
So
Looks
in
like it
order to actually
reset all of the settings that I
understand it,
had.
you'd have to like put it into like Pro Audio software and scrub at a high speed to like hear it, or just put it into VLC and speed up the playback.
I grade assignments like that. I have an assignment that my students turn in where they give a narrated keynote presentation, and I
Uh-huh.
require them to submit it as a video file instead of a keynote file because you can't scrub through the keynote once it starts with narration. Like you can only start from the beginning, and you can only um, and you can't speed it up at all or rewind at all. So I have them submitted as video, and then I play them back at least 2x because they all talk so slow.
All right, are we good?
Yep, it looks like we are indeed live.
Okay.
So, and recording. I'm going to drop a marker, and you'll hear the music when the music is ready to go. In fact, Bill, you're going to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will lock the camera to you for the time being, and I will mute myself. Well, no, I don't want to mute myself because I do want you to hear the music, so I'll do that after the music.
Okay.
Well, let me drop a marker. That's weird. Hitting M.
Hello and welcome to Streamers and Punches, the podcast from Sound Notion TV that looks at current events and new releases in the world of film music. My name is Bill Witham.
And I'm Kevin Wilt.
And welcome to today's episode. We're going to be looking at some interviews, some awards, some cool stuff coming up with some concerts, and then talk about what we've been listening to lately and what we're maybe looking forward to be listening to soon. So right away, Howard Shore, the composer on the Lord of the Rings trilogy, as well as the Hobbit trilogy, was recently rewarded the Maestro Award. Kevin, what is the Maestro Award?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
We have an article up on it's not been awarded yet. It's going to be at the Billboard Hollywood Reporter Film and TV Music Conference.
I really like how much prep you guys do for the show.
Yeah,
I
that's
think it
great.
really adds a lot.
Hey,
Yeah.
we bring the links, and the reader and listener can feel free to read about them as much as they want. We
Yeah,
don't
what
force
did you
them
come to this
say.
podcast for? Information? Wrong.
Anyway, as I was saying, this is it's an award that will be given by the at the Billboard Hollywood Reporter Film and TV Music Conference. The conference is being held on November 5th and 6th. So he will be there to participate in a Q&A and be awarded this the Maestro Award at this ceremony, which is pretty cool. So it has not happened yet, Bill.
Okay.
We've got a link from Billboard.com, an article giving you all the details. In case you actually, it sounds like it'd be a pretty cool conference to go to if you're in LA. I'm not in LA, so I will not be going to said conference. But there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the website Examiner.com has been interviewing a couple composers lately. We've got friend of the show, Bruce Broughton, and we've got Marco Beltrami. Bruce lately has been, I've been kind of following his Facebook feeds. He's been doing some arranging work I saw for the Hollywood Bowl concerts. And and then, of course, Marco Beltrami. The most, I think, highest profile recent score that I can recall would be the Wolverine, where he's in Japan. But I know,
there was a film that just came out a couple of weeks ago. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I don't know off the top of my head. But there was just within the last week or two, there was a film that came out that had a Marco Beltrami score.
Oh, the Snowpiercer.
What was it?
Snowpiercer.
No, that wasn't the one I was thinking of. I haven't heard of the thing that you're talking about.
Okay.
Oh, the November Man with Pierce Brosnan. That's what it was.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, you're right. He's done quite a few kind of big action thriller kinds of things. Yeah, the Wolverine. He's done a couple of Wolverine movies, hasn't he? There's like the Wolverine Origins. I think he did.
Not.
Maybe not.
No, not the first one. Just the second one. The one that's just called
Just
the
Go Wolverine.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he did Snowpiercer was done last year, but it was, to my knowledge, it was released like more recently for various reasons of international distribution and stuff like that. So anyway, that's cool. And then there's another film, The Drop, that I believe should be coming out soon, if not already out. Let's see if it's got. No, it's coming up. Oh, that's the one, right? I'm seeing it advertised. It's got Tom Hardy. It's got James Gandolfini. So.
Okay.
September. Oh, it comes out today. There we go. So that's how current we are. Kevin, we're awesome about keeping up with
Wait,
this.
so there are still James Gandolfini movies that haven't been released?
Yes.
This,
There's supposed to be like 6 Robin Williams movies that are not done yet.
Are they shot?
I've heard that of those 6 movies, I think 3 of them are actually complete enough that they will be finished. The other ones are maybe scrapped.
All right.
Yeah.
that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then speaking of, let's see. So there's some interviews with both of those through Examiner, but John Debney, another notable film and television composer, is being interviewed on WAMG and on MusicTimes.com. Is this for the same things, Kevin?
It is, yeah. And we've also, in addition to those 2 things, we've got a link on IndieWire.com where you can actually hear. Just a couple of days ago, I want to say actually it was like the beginning of September, the History Channel broadcast a mini-series called about Houdini, starring Adrian Brody as Harry Houdini, that John Debney score for. So all these interviews and things are mostly talking about that score. But this link from IndieWire, you can actually hear a suite of some of that music from the score, which is kind of cool because I listened to it, and you would think, okay, it's Houdini, it's turn of the 20th century, so, is it going to be kind of an old-timey sort of thing? And it's not. He actually, John Debney, and he talks about this in one of the interviews, takes a very technological approach to it. And part of his argument was, as an illusionist, Houdini was doing a lot of things with new technology at the time. And so John Debney has kind of translated that, so there are a lot of what sound like more contemporary electronic things that he sort of used as a tool for or to put into context of this Houdini miniseries, which is an interesting approach because that's not. I wouldn't have predicted that. Like, Bill, if I told you someone was scoring a Houdini miniseries, you would probably have lots of guesses as to what that score might sound like, and I don't think this would be any of them.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's worth a listen. It's and I like Debney. He's someone who I can kind of go back and forth on sometimes. Like, I was not crazy about his score to Iron Man 2, but his score to Elf with Will Ferrell, it's a lovely Christmas score. I like that score. So
yeah.
I think the context depends on quite a bit with him. But I would check this one out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we've got a link you can hear a suite of the music from Houdini.
Right.
So we'll be able to share with you through the website. So check that out. It'll be at soundnotion.tv/SAP where you can find that link. Also, speaking of film music, the next thing was for anybody that's been following the Hunger Games trilogy, or actually it's a tetralogy, I guess, because they're going to break the last book into 2 movies. What I know. So the first of those, the Mockingjay Part 1, so it looks like James Newton Howard's score is now in the recording session phase.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be, I'm assuming, probably somebody like Pete Anthony is in charge of conducting, and James Newton Howard is probably there overseeing it and taking care of business, as it were. What did we find out that, yes, it was in fact official in our last episode that Conrad Pope was in New Zealand and sessions had begun on The Last Hobbit? Okay.
Yeah.
Any word on if that's completed or that's just still ongoing?
You know, just from kind of following his Facebook feed, it looks like he's still there. So
Okay.
I
I
don't
like how all of a sudden you are the authority on that. Like you just came back from New Zealand and you should know.
That's right. Well, he and I are buddies. What can I say?
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so that's with some interviews and some recording sessions, business going on. Next, Danny Elfman has a Halloween show coming up. The Nokia Theater is. I'll try to not throw Kevin under the bus this time with too many questions.
Okay.
Just,
it's not like I don't know anything.
oh, okay. Well, where's the Nokia Theater?
The Nokia Theater? It's in Hollywood. I'm pretty sure the Nokia Theater is where they've been doing the Oscars the last couple of years.
Okay, that sounds right. Let's see. Oh, and there will also be a November 2nd show at the Honda Center, which I guess since they're not really saying locations, that's probably also in LA.
I think so, yeah. And the Nokia Theater one I think is on Halloween. The second one I want to say is like November 2nd or something like that.
Right. No, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
November 2.
I didn't
yeah. That's let's see. So 87 piece Hollywood studio. Yeah, that's cool. And John Malcherry will be there conducting it, and you'll have like a lot of the things you would expect, the sort of trademark Danny Elfman scores like Batman, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Nightmare Before Christmas, Alice in Wonderland, and then Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
And it was about this time, I think maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, that I want to say it was last year, where Danny Elfman was doing, because it started in LA and then it kind of turned into a nationwide thing, where he was doing his like Tim Burton concert. It was basically this, where the orchestras would play a bunch of music from Danny Elfman's various Tim Burton scores. The LA performance, I think he was even up there, like singing some songs and stuff, because it was the first time he had performed live in 15 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this Halloween concert is maybe not the same thing, but certainly built on the success of those concerts. So I think it'd be cool. I mean, if you're going to hear a concert of one composer based on Halloween,
yeah,
unless it's a Bernard Herrmann concert, this is probably a Danny Elfman concert is probably the greatest thing to listen to then. Yeah, I think it would be cool. I'm not in LA, so I can't go see it, but it would be cool. Speaking of things that are in other towns that I would actually consider, forking over the money to go see.
That's a slightly better segue than mine. Speaking about film music, other thing happened. I'm
just better at this than you. A couple of days ago, maybe about a week.
That's why you have the bow tie.
Yeah, that's right. This particular link is from September 2nd. It was announced that the Lord of the Rings trilogy will be performed, the whole trilogy will be performed with a live score of orchestra and chorus at Lincoln Center in New York. This is going to be happening in April. It's going to be spread out April 8th to the 12th of next year, which is really cool. Now, going back for years now, there have been kind of a touring company of sometimes Howard Shore conducts, but usually not. There's been a touring company where you can go see an orchestra and a chorus perform a score for one of the Lord of the Rings films. I didn't see one of the live films. I saw a performance of the Lord of the Rings Symphony, which was basically still 2 hours of music, but it was like a 6-movement suite of music from the films. But it has been possible in recent years to see an orchestra play a live score while watching the film. This, I think, is the first time they're doing the whole trilogy in such a close time span. So it's, I'm just looking at the article real quickly. I don't remember off the top of my head how they will be spread out. So it looks like.
Well, it says 250 musicians, so that's pretty intense.
And well, that's the orchestra plus the chorus, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But over the course of these, 4 or 5 days, I think it's 5 days, they're going to do the whole trilogy twice. Yeah, so that could be really cool. It would be nice to fly to, spend, the week in Manhattan or something and go see that. Tickets tickets run from individual tickets are $59 to $150 per screening. So that's think of each film as a different concert basically.
You can buy the $400 VIP Gondor package. So really, and I'm not making that up. That's a real thing. Or you can just pay $59 for Hobbit nosebleeds. So
yeah.
So there's that. So it'll be this guy Ludwig Vicky or Wiki. I'm assuming Vicky will be the conductor holding this all together. And the article does have a very funny statement where it says, for the audience, it's a rare opportunity to hear the live music while watching the trilogy play above the orchestra. For the musicians, it will be an endurance test.
Absolutely, it will. Absolutely. I mean, it'll be an endurance test for the audience. It's fascinating too because there are so many connections between Lord of the Rings and Wagner's Ring cycle, and this is just kind of the next newest one. Because every summer in Bayreuth you have the complete performance of the Ring, and it's the same thing. Each opera is kind of one evening, and so you're there for
4 nights. One opera every night, right? And it's like they do it out.
This is basically the film music version of that.
Yeah, and I don't think they've ever done a Star Wars like 3 nights in a row with a live orchestra playing Star Wars music of the original. Has that ever happened?
I don't think so. I mean, there have certainly been lots of Pops concerts where it's like Star Wars suites and things. I don't know that anyone has done a concert where they're playing the whole score that accompanies the film.
And it's interesting because there was a regional orchestra that I saw a couple weeks back. It was in August. It was the Holland Symphony, which is in Holland, Michigan. But they had an evening. It was basically a Pops concert, and they had an evening of film music, mostly film and some Broadway. But I was speaking to the conductor afterwards about how, and with one of the pieces was Lord of the Rings music, specifically from Two Towers. And we were discussing how difficult it is to sustain a concert piece based on cues from the Two Towers. And in some ways, that's I was going to say that had the most musically interesting, but that's not true. There's great moments in all three, but still, the arrangement had about 8 bars of this cue, and then moving right to 8 bars of another cue, and then it just constantly kept sort of like rechecking itself to move to something else so that it sort of sustained motion and musical interest. And so but see, with Star Wars music, you can have, here's the Princess Leia's theme, here's Imperial March, here's Yoda's Yoda's theme, and then the asteroid field. So you can actually kind of do that.
A lot of those things, there are all sorts of different versions of.
Well, you can have all that without film, but. So Lord of the Rings, it's like they kind of said, well, we can't really do that, so we'll just get more mileage if we show the movie and play the music. But the Star Wars stuff, they've had these like laser shows, and they've gone to the palace, and they'll have this huge orchestra, and like, C-3PO and R2-D2 are out on stage, and there's laser lights, and it's just kind of like, well, okay, they're not really going to play the movies, they're just going to do like a highlight reel with like, video,
right?
Greatest hits and all. So okay, well, that's cool.
You talk about this Lord of the Rings concerts or these concerts being an endurance test. I think if you did a Star Wars thing like this, it would be the same thing where this is music that took
3 hours long.
Right. This is music that took weeks and weeks and weeks to record. To try and play that much music, to play all of that music in such a short period of time, you're going to have brass and wind players whose faces are falling off. I mean,
well, yes and no. I mean, they can have. I always wondered how they would do this live. If you have to play the Wagner opera, that's 3 hours at least, and there's a ton of brass playing on each night, and so they've always found a way to do that. But secondly, you have assistant principals and and fill-ins and things like that.
Yeah.
But then the actual music of Lord of the Rings is so sustained. And so, it's like horns are playing long notes. And then all of a sudden, then you get kind of a little bit of action. Then it kind of like ebbs away and dies back down. And then there's a lot of minor chords being held. So I kind of feel like it's just like long tones. You're just probably playing a ton of long tones. But that could get taxing. But
I mean, I'll say when I saw, and this was maybe, probably 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know. Maybe even longer than that. When I saw the Lord of the Rings Symphony which again, it was basically a 2-hour suite of Lord of the Rings music.
Yeah.
And each film had 2 movements. By the time you get to the last 2 movements that are the Return of the King movements, you've got the big Gondor theme that's like just all horn unison stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, 4 movements into that music, and they were sounding tired, and they didn't. You don't have 8 or 12 horns sitting there where you can trade off quite that much. I mean,
Yeah, they're probably
to play.
They're probably looking to do it, relatively on the cheap, and so then you don't get that. And then also in Hollywood, as with any recorded music, you take breaks. So,
Right.
That's a great take. Okay, good, we're done with that cue. All right, let's take an hour. I'll see you guys after lunch.
Yeah.
And we can come back when we're fresh and then blow the hell out of our horns and sound great. And then when it's in the moment, it's like if you don't have the chops to last, then you're in trouble.
Right.
That's interesting, though. They're calling it the 21st Century Orchestra and Chorus, I think, or something like that. The 21st
I would imagine
century.
it's a pickup group, yeah. Even though it's at Lincoln Center, this is not like the New York Phil that's doing this.
Yeah, the 21st Century Symphony Orchestra and Chorus. But I'll bet there's some pretty good ringers in there because
I'll bet you're right.
yeah, I mean, you could make easily a complete orchestra in New York without even going to the Phil or the Met, and and have a group that can probably withstand. I would say probably withstand Lord of the Rings, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Let's see, Kevin. I finally had a chance to catch the Tim's Vermeer movie.
Yes.
And that for our
bugging you and talking about that film and that score on this podcast for probably close to a year now.
Well, for our devoted listeners, you'll know Kevin was the one who basically single-handedly championed that movie in every possible way, and I was like, yeah, it's a movie, I know that, whatever, and then I finally watched it, and I was instantly motivated to go out and buy one of those paint-by-number paint sets because I was like, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be the best freaking paint set like ever, and I'm going to put the varnish on it afterwards, and maybe I'll cry.
No. Or is it still in the box?
It's I love the documentary. It was awesome. I think any viewer that has any interest in the arts and the questions that it brings up, like, is it just that you have divine inspiration to create something, or are you just going to stick with it and toil away until you're done, which is not the sort of instant gratification pop culture approach to what makes an artist an artist.
Right.
But it does bring up an interesting question, because by the end, I was convinced that, the initial mystery that was very fascinating to hook you in was one part of the documentary, but by the end of it, I was convinced that Tim, I forget his last name, I can't remember, but Tim, the lead guy, is in fact an artist, but just not maybe in a traditional way we're used to pointing out or holding up like, this is an artist and that is not, and so...
And like you said, that's kind of the big philosophical question of the film is essentially what he's doing, to explain it very quickly, is he's painting in such a way that he's using a setup of like mirrors that allows him to basically paint by copying the live image.
Including all of the shading and lighting and dimensions and like what I think of as gradients of color, how this dark yellow moves into this lighter, brighter yellow, and he's able to
So the argument is that he's not making a lot of decisions in terms of like artistic decisions, and he would even argue that I think there's not a whole lot of technique to it because you're just copying what you see. But what it does take is an absurd amount of patience.
Yeah.
But that's the big question: is that enough to make it art? But it's a really interesting documentary, and like I've said many times before, it's a very charming score that goes with it.
No,
You guys have seen My Kid Could Paint That, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Similar question of whether the fact that it is difficult to make, if it needs to be difficult to make to be worthy art.
Yeah.
Or who painted it.
Right.
Well,
that's another thing on that particular thing, yeah.
I mean, that was a very interesting question when you're talking about art and the creative process is, did it have to be difficult? Did it take a certain amount of trained technique or not?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, though. My Kid Could Paint That did not have a score by Conrad Pope. So There you go. But it was very nice. I mean, just very simple flute with strings or flute with piano for a lot of it. And I was just I found myself just really enjoying it. And yes, there's a good amount of repetition, so you do get the themes kind of stuck in your head. But I mean, it changed moods when there was tonal changes within. Like sometimes there were humorous asides or fun sort of vignettes throughout the documentary. But really, kind of. In some cases, it kind of somber, but kind of had some punch to it, and it was good. It was just a good score, and I just kind of thought, man, that would be kind of difficult because there was no like action scenes. You're not really hitting video footage. You're just kind of
absolutely.
You're really, I mean, in this case, forgive the pun, but Conrad is kind of painting a musical kind of approach, like broader brushstrokes in the background to capture like the tone overall. And I really found it very nice and satisfying and just very cool, like very appropriate.
One of the things I really liked about it too is you talk about all of those things. I think it's a great example of how good a score can be when you
know what you're doing.
You don't tie up the hands of your composer, because Conrad Pope, there were a couple of interviews with him that came out around the release of this film, where he basically said the film is produced by Penn and Teller. Penn Jillette is like the narrator of the film, and Teller is the director. And when he would meet with them to talk about the music, their entire attitude was like, just do what you think is right, and that's it. They completely let him go to do whatever he wanted, and the end result was great because it wasn't 19 different executives telling him what the style needed to be or how it needed to fit or anything like that.
Yeah, they had just the right amount of cooks in the kitchen.
You can have this beautiful, creative, artistic thing if you just let your artists do what they do best.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. Let's see, just a couple other things I've been checking out. I'm trying to catch up on my Walking Dead, and for a while I was like, I don't really know if I'm into the show anymore, but I started watching Season 3. It's on Netflix, and man, Season 3 is awesome. And they just reminded me all over again, like with the performances and just the acting, the writing, just the choice of actors in the show, and the plot developments, and the realization that the worst things in that show that can happen to people are done by other people, not by zombies or walkers. But anyway, the Bear McCreary score is just, there's sometimes it is so subtle, or maybe it's just turned down really low, but it's just right on the money. It's so not beating you over the head. It's perfect for that show with its really, really gritty, realistic take on a zombie apocalypse. But then that main title is just so perfect. Because it just, like I told him the time he was on our show, every time they start, they have what they call cold open for a TV show. It's just right into the heart of you just go right to the show with footage, and then when like something dramatic happens, then you hear that music that clicks in, and then the screen goes black, but the music's going, it's continuing. Then it goes right into the main title sequence of the opening credits with his music going over that, and it's such a perfect connector. It's just such a perfect glue for that opening. It keeps the tension like alive, and it doesn't give you a chance to rest, which is the way the show is. It's so intense.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to see how they just keep it really good, like really high quality. And I'm just bummed that Netflix does not have season 4. So I hope they fix that very soon. And then let's see. I have caught a couple of the new Doctor Who episodes, season 8. Actually, Kevin, I can save that one since we've both seen that.
That's right. Yeah, well, let's hang on to that. We'll put a pin in that one because I've seen.
A couple, just real quick, in a new release that I'll mention in a moment briefly, I'll say that the Buck Rogers was not the best show, but it was a sci-fi show. It was a thing, and it was in the heart of the late 70s, early 80s when I was a kid, and you had Star Wars in the theaters, Star Trek in the theaters, and then you had Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers on television, and it was, I don't know, it had kind of a catchy but corny but still sort of catchy tune for the main title credits. But our friend of the show, Bruce Broughton, cut his teeth on scoring many episodes of Buck Rogers, along with another composer, John, I'm not sure, Kakavas. I don't know how you say his last name, but he's also written concert music as well. And then Stu Phillips and Glenn A. Larson, who are also both co-creators and producers of the show, they also helped create some of the music along with this other guy, Herbert Don Woods. So a lot of guys behind the scenes helped create the music for in the individual episodes. Anyway, but you have a chance now that it's been released, 4 CDs of season 2, and so you get, of course, a combination of the main title and then the sort of the library music that they have, or the individual scenes. But it is interesting to hear a lot of trademark Broughton devices are still used in his early days on TV that he used in Silverado, Young Sherlock Holmes, and then later stuff he did as well throughout the 80s and 90s. And it's fun. I mean, I'm not saying that this music is like Star Wars trilogy music or anything like that, but it's just kind of fun, almost like historical archival curiosity to listen to how they scored on an economy budget of very few studio musicians. And so it's kind of been enjoyable. And then just to sort of follow up, Godzilla and X-Men Days of Future Past, I saw them in theaters, but now I'm having a chance to actually listen to the scores on CD a little closer, and I'm really enjoying those as well. The Godzilla, Alexander Desplat, is just clearly having a lot of fun with a monster movie. And then John Ottman, who we fortunately had a chance to talk to, is also just having a lot of fun returning to some of his X-Men themes to use on Days of Future Past. And so that's kind of what I've been checking out. And Kevin, what about you?
The two big things I've been watching lately are, as you kind of already mentioned, the new series of Doctor Who just started up a couple of weeks ago. And I've also been checking out on Netflix Arrow from CW, it's now going into, I think it's going into its 3rd season. I'm a few episodes in the 1st season. But it's basically a 1-hour drama following the origin of the Green Arrow. And so the music is by Blake Neely, who's done a bunch of other different TV shows. He'll also be scoring the spin-off show called The Flash, which starts up pretty soon. It's been really good. It's the music and let me restart there. The show itself is actually, it's not in the Nolan Batman universe, but it's certainly trying for the kind of real grittiness that it's very dark. It's not light and fun like some of the Marvel superhero movies. So as that is the case, the music seems to be kind of in line with the Hans Zimmer Batman universe music as well. And I think it serves the show really well. So I've been checking that out. But Bill, as you kind of alluded to, the last couple of weeks we've both been watching these first few new episodes of Doctor Who, where we have a new Doctor. Same composer. We've had Murray Gold, who's been scoring episodes of Doctor Who. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if he goes all the way back to the reboot, which was in like 2005, but I think he might.
I think so. Yeah, I think his name's been on there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's gone from almost complete electronically, which Doctor Who's notable because in the 60s it was an almost all electronic synthesizer score, most notably the main theme, and then it's gone almost now completely to, what is it, the BBC Wales Symphony Orchestra or something like that?
Yeah, so they're recording with a pretty sizable orchestra for every episode, and it shows. I mean, the production value and the qualities of the music is really high.
Yeah, yeah.
It's got to be, and it would be great for us to, we've been kind of trying a little bit, but it'd be great for us to get him on to talk about this a little bit on our show, because it seems like it's such a unique compositional challenge. Not only is it this show that is now in its 8th season of this reboot, plus all the Christmas specials and things like that.
Yeah.
Which that kind of longevity is tough to begin with, but just the fact that you have a show where it's the same show, but you're replacing characters so frequently. Even the lead character of the Doctor is a new actor every couple of years, and that's been one of the interesting things with this new series. These are the first few episodes that we get Peter Capaldi, who's the newest actor to play the Doctor, and every new Doctor kind of gets their own theme, and every new assistant or companion gets their own theme. So he's constantly having to come up with new material for these characters, but it can't be so completely new that it doesn't fit the show anymore. And so I think compositionally, it's got to be a really interesting challenge and a tough job to kind of keep things fresh.
And that's not to mention the decades-old history that the IP has to begin with.
Right. I mean, this is a show that it's now in its 51st year almost. So there's a lot of baggage.
This is interesting then. Do you ever notice the actual Doctor Who theme ever being used in the show? Because I never have.
Yes. I haven't. In these first 3 episodes, I don't know that I could pick out the theme for this new Doctor. But I mean, just the older Doctor themes I could pick out in a heartbeat because I'm a nerd. The previous Doctor, Matt Smith, his theme was like this jaunty 7/8 kind of thing.
Right, I remember that. Yeah, but I mean the main Doctor Who theme that is.
Oh, like the title theme.
The title theme, I never hear it ever used.
I don't know that you ever hear it actually as part of the score. It sort of reminds me of Breaking Bad, where it wasn't until I think the second to last episode, or maybe the third to last episode of Breaking Bad, of the series, I mean.
Yeah.
Where Walter White's character is in a bar.
Yeah.
He's having this particularly Walter White Heisenberg decision where it's one of his more badass moments.
Yeah.
Finally, after 5 seasons, you finally get a hint of that opening title, like steel guitar, lead belly kind of thing.
Yeah. But it plays. It plays like a phrase almost.
Right.
But before you got like a couple strums, and then that was it. That was the opening. Right. It was like a 10-second texture. It was like an assignment I give my scoring students. Right.
It wasn't much more than like a bumper.
Yeah.
But in Doctor Who, I mean, there are, I like the show, but there are many, many, many people who are better authorities on Doctor Who than I am. I can't really recall a moment. I'm only familiar with the kind of the reboot from 2005. I can't really recall a moment where you get that Doctor Who theme as part of the underscore. I think it's more or less just self-contained as the main title.
The main title, and that's it. Kind of like as a keepsake for the lineage, the tradition of the show, sort of. It's you say Doctor Who and you expect to hear that music, and we provide that. But then once the episode starts, you're going to get these characters' themes for these new situations and storylines. So
right. But as far as themes for the individual Doctors and the individual characters on the show, each actor who's played the Doctor kind of has their own tune. In most of the companions or the assistants, the people that travel with the Doctor, they all have their own tunes as well. And actually, one of the best places where you can observe that is about this time last year. I think it was November. They had the Doctor Who the 50th anniversary special, which was basically like a feature-length movie. You could actually go see it in the theaters, which I did because again, I'm a dork. I saw it in 3D, by the way.
I'll also point out Kevin's wearing a bow tie today.
That's right. I am wearing a bow tie. Yeah. Which that's because bow ties are cool.
I'm sure I can hear the bow tie. Actually, I can hear it really clearly.
I'll also point out that was a Doctor Who reference where he says bow ties are cool.
Right. The new Doctor does not wear bow ties, but Matt Smith, the previous Doctor, wore bow ties. And
the new Doctor looks
it is a handsome bow tie that Kevin is wearing.
I do like this bow tie. It's a nice like charcoal gray. Anyway, in this 50th anniversary special, you have several different Doctors kind of running into each other. So you have Matt Smith's Doctor and David Tennant's Doctor in the same movie. And so you get the Matt Smith, the kind of jaunty 7/8 thing, which is used as kind of the main. It's not that opening main title because the main title is the main title, but when you finally get the title card as the reveal of like the name of the special, it kind of comes up then. But then the first time they cut to David Tennant's Doctor, you get to hear the David Tennant theme. So they each have their own identifiable material, but none of it. Yeah, you're right, Bill. None of it comes from that opening main title.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I did want to cover a couple new releases. Kevin, you pointed out about the Lion King, the Legacy Collection.
Yeah,
That's going to come out, and finally, for fans of that, you can get like the entire Zimmer score.
right. Which is kind of 20 years in the making, because the original releases of any soundtracks of the Lion King were all they were the songs from the film, or they were Elton John singing the songs from the film.
Yeah.
And I think at best it was something like you could get a CD with maybe like 11 minutes of Hans Zimmer score in it. Usually the big piece being the wildebeest stampede is like the really big musical underscore moment in that film, aside from all the songs. But now with this Legacy Collection release, which is a couple of discs, I think, you can finally hear the whole thing, which is the first time that's been available. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean,
as much as we knock Hans Zimmer on this show, and we probably do that more than is necessary, even. Lion King is one of those things you got to point out. Like that was he should do more stuff like the Lion King, because that's pretty great music.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable score. Let's see, just kind of a rough overview of a couple other things. Let's see. Oh, the Buck Rogers that I mentioned earlier. So that is currently out, and it's relatively been recently made available. Also, something that I haven't really had a chance to dive into it just yet, but James Horner's score for Cocoon from 1986 is also out in a kind of a remastered / expanded version. And I wanted to give it a listen to kind of hear some of the differences. So basically, Kevin's question that he asked me on the last show in regards to John Williams' Empire of the Sun and some other score that I had, is it worth getting the new version? So
yeah,
I suppose I am taking it upon myself to determine that. But the Cocoon music is kind of nice. It sort of comes from an era where James Horner had lots of different scoring jobs and kind of gave a pretty decent score for most of those, even though people found ways to nitpick them. But I mean, I do think that Willow is a lot different than the Star Trek movies, and they're a lot different than the Rocketeer, although there are sort of James Horner isms that he does borrow from himself, and they're all different than Cocoon, and they're all kind of enjoyable for different reasons. So anyway, but there it is. So James Horner's got his Cocoon is out. That score can be purchased now. And just kind of going back over my favorite site, the Screen Archives, they've got, let's see, Gorky Park, which is, I'm trying to just think of things that are notable, but that's also a Horner score. So that is out and available, and it's in an expanded version. Let's see, Terms of Endearment is available. That is, I should know that, but I don't right off the top of my head. Michael Gore, so Gore. Someone that we don't normally speak about that often, but is definitely notable if you are familiar with music for film and television, especially from the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Let's see. In general, that's kind of it for right now. I mean, there's other scores that are available and things, just not any that I found particularly notable for familiarity or people that might be interested in things that check out our show. So that's about it on that.
I think we should mention, just in order to be fair and to be thorough, you mentioned ScreenArchives.com, which is a great website. The other two really good ones, we haven't really talked about any of these in a while, but for those listeners who are interested and maybe don't know about these websites, Intrada, INTRADA, is another great website, just Intrada.com. It sells a ton of different recordings for film scores. And La La Land Records, which we talked about before, and a couple years ago we had Lucas Kendall on our show, who founded that label. They actually produce a lot of film score albums. So La La Land Records, I think it's la-larecords.com. If you just Google it, you can find it. But those three websites are three. If you're interested in finding maybe recordings of film scores that are either re-releases or remastered, or things that are just tough to find, all three of those are really great websites to check out. You can oftentimes have more luck there than even just looking on Amazon or iTunes or something like that.
Well, yeah, and a couple of things I just want to add to that. If you are an avid shopper at Amazon, Entrada releases are now purchasable through Amazon. For a while, they weren't because you'd have to go to these specialty sites to find, the expansion of Cocoon. But I bought it through Amazon just recently.
Mhm.
The other thing, though, I want to add is if you go to screenarchives.com, they have a new releases, basically rectangular menu screen, and they have all these little tabs on top of the menu screen. And the first one is Film Score Monthly, which I believe we were told they're not going to be coming out with any new releases. But it's there because they kind of have a business connection with Screen Archives, so they're going to showcase their stuff. But another tab says La La Land, and another tab says Entrada, and then another one says Varese Saraband, which for years was a big soundtrack label. Anyway, it's kind of been overshadowed in the last 20 years, I think, by these other upstarts or just other companies. But for anybody interested, you can just simply go to Screen Archives and look at what those other labels have been producing lately, all in that one little area. So you're not missing out on, if I go here, I'm missing what they're putting over there. It won't happen because of Screen Archives, which I dig. Yeah, so it's cool. It's cool. Check it out. Yeah.
Quick correction before we have to get corrected by somebody in the audience.
Okay.
La La Land Records is just lalalandrecords.com.
No dash. Okay.
No dashes, and include the word land. La La Land Records.
I said that, didn't I? Did I just say Lala Records?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, La La Land Records. Sorry.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, that will do it for this episode of Streamers and Punches. You can listen to us on soundnotion.tv/SAP, where you can subscribe to our show, leave comments, and find links to the music we spoke about. You can also subscribe to the show through iTunes. My name is Bill Witham.
And I'm Kevin Wilt.
Thank you for listening.